Imagine taking this critical legal document, right? Like, say, a corporate authorization that is just absolutely crucial for this major international business expansion.
Oh, yeah. The kind of thing where millions of dollars are on the line.
Exactly. And this document is meant for the government of Iran. But, because of decades of geopolitical fallout and completely severed diplomatic ties, the only way to get that document legally recognized overseas is to physically mail it to the Embassy of Pakistan in Washington, D.C.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right. It is wild. Today, we are decoding a system where global politics basically dictates your local paperwork. So welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
We are looking at the high-stakes and, honestly, surprisingly complex world of international document authentication.
Yeah, and it really is a bureaucratic ecosystem that, well, most people remain completely oblivious to, at least until they are suddenly, trapped inside it.
Trapped is a good word for it.
It really is. Whether you are finalizing an international adoption or setting up a corporate branch in Dubai, or even just preparing to marry a foreign national, your local documents essentially need to earn a global passport.
Right. Because you can't just hand over local papers.
Exactly. You cannot simply slide a Massachusetts birth certificate across a desk to a judge in Spain or Qatar and expect them to recognize it as a valid legal instrument.
I mean, they'd probably just look at you like you were crazy.
But much. They have no way to verify it.
So to figure out how to successfully acquire that global passport, without losing your mind in the process, we are pulling from two incredibly comprehensive guides.
And these are fresh, too, newly updated for April 2026.
Yes, exactly. The source material comes from Hanson Webb. He's a veteran Massachusetts notary public. He brings over 17 years of license experience and, get this, has completed more than 11,190 signings.
Which is just a massive amount of on-the-ground experience.
Yeah.
His perspective is invaluable because, he operates this mobile service across Boston, Cambridge, Lowell, and Worcester. And he offers bilingual French and Arabic services.
That's a huge advantage in this specific field.
Oh, absolutely. He isn't writing from some academic ivory tower. He is giving us a ground-level, deeply practical view of how international authentication actually functions in the physical world.
Yeah.
So our primary objective here, our mission for this deep dive, is to decode the exact logistical path your specific document requires to be legally accepted abroad. We want to arm you with the knowledge to pick the correct authentication route the very first time.
Because knowing the correct route is really everything. The alternative isn't just a minor administrative hiccup. Picking the wrong path means weeks of agonizing delays.
Not to mention the money.
Right. Potentially hundreds of dollars in rejection fees. And honestly, the total collapse of whatever international arrangement you were trying to finalize in the first place. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before you seal a single envelope, you really have to determine which side of the global paperwork divide your destination country sits on. And that divide originates from this pivotal international agreement, the 1961 Hague Convention.
Right. And to understand the 1961 Hague Apostille Convention, you have to look at the sheer nightmare of international paperwork prior to that year.
I can only imagine.
It was brutal. Every single document sent across borders required an agonizing multi-step verification process. The convention was essentially designed to be the ultimate diplomatic shortcut.
A shortcut that split the globe, basically.
Exactly. It split the globe into two categories. Today, there are over 125 member countries. That includes major economies like Italy, Mexico, Spain, Brazil, Germany, India.
That's a solid list.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of the world. And if your destination is on that list, you are granted access to a streamlined single-step path. And this is known as the apostille.
The apostille. So that single-step path involves taking your document and acquiring just one specific certification, the apostille itself.
Correct. Just the one.
So if you are a resident of Massachusetts, for example, you secure that certificate from either the Massachusetts Secretary of State or the U.S. State Department, depending on the document's origin, right?
Right, exactly. State documents go to the state, federal to federal.
Makes sense. And once that certificate is attached, the receiving member country is legally obligated by the 1961 treaty to accept the document without demanding any further embassy legalization. It sounds kind of like having TSA pre-check for your documents.
Oh, I like that.
Like one quick scan and you're at your gate. But the alternative, Embassy legalization, that sounds like being pulled out of the standard security line for a full 4-hour luggage audit.
That is a highly accurate analogy, and the sources emphasize that the Apostille path is relatively efficient. I mean,
Hmm.
processing times range from a single day for state-level documents up to about 12 weeks for federal documents.
Okay, 12 weeks is a bit of a wait, but still.
Oh, yeah. But costs generally land between $95 and $550, depending on the route. But what's fascinating here is that the simplicity of this system actually creates a massive vulnerability for the uninformed.
Oh, wait. How so?
Well, this brings us to a phenomenon the sources ominously call the apostille trap.
The apostille trap. I mean, I could see how people fall into that. The word apostille just sounds so definitive. It sounds so universally authoritative.
It really does. It sounds like a magic word.
Exactly. If a business owner pays like $150 to get this official ribbon and seal from their state government, they naturally assume it acts as a universal skeleton key for international courts everywhere.
And that assumption leads to absolute disaster. People frequently secure an apostille for a commercial agreement and blindly just FedEx it over to a business partner in a non-Hague country, like the United Arab Emirates, for instance, or Kuwait.
Oh, no. So what happens when it gets there?
The destination country's authorities look at the apostille and essentially say, well, we never signed the 1961 treaty, so this certification means absolutely nothing to our legal system.
Wow. They just flat out reject it.
They reject the filing entirely and send it right back.
Ouch. So the rejection isn't even about the content of the document itself. It's about the document speaking the wrong diplomatic language, basically.
Exactly. It's a formatting issue on a geopolitical scale.
And then you're suddenly back to square one, having wasted significant capital and probably a month of transit time.
Mm.
This means we have to look at the alternative. Because if relying on this Hague Treaty for a non-member country results in total rejection, how do you actually establish legal trust with a nation that refuses the apostille?
You are forced to build that trust manually, step by painful step.
Which brings us back to that luggage audit analogy.
Precisely. For non-Hague destinations, and this includes major players like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, you must enter what is called embassy legalization. It is not a single step. It is a rigid 4-step chain.
4 steps. And I'm guessing the costs go way up.
Oh, the financial and temporal costs escalate dramatically here. We are looking at 3 to 8 weeks of processing and costs soaring anywhere between $400 and $900 per document.
Per document. That is wild. Let's analyze the mechanics of this chain. Because embassy legalization, it sounds like trying to cash a massive out-of-state check at a tiny small-town bank.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Like, the teller doesn't know you, so they call the branch manager. But the manager doesn't know your specific bank, so they have to call a regional director. Every single person in the hierarchy has to personally vouch for the person directly below them before the transaction can even proceed.
That is the perfect analogy. You are basically building a chain of custody for trust. Let's break down exactly how a Massachusetts resident navigates this 4-step gauntlet based on the source material.
All right, give me step 1.
Step 1 relies on a local Massachusetts notary public. If you are dealing with drafted documents, so things like a power of attorney, a corporate authorization, or maybe a single status affidavit for marriage, you must have your signature notarized locally first.
Okay, but the sources draw a sharp distinction here regarding vital records, right? Like birth certificates.
Yes, very important distinction. Birth certificates, death certificates, or court orders completely bypass this first local notary step.
Which, if we think about the mechanism, that makes perfect sense. A power of attorney is drafted by a private citizen, so a local notary has to actually verify their identity.
Right, they need to prove you are who you say you are.
But a birth certificate is intrinsically generated by the state government. The state doesn't need a local notary to verify a document the state itself just printed.
Precisely. The origin of the document dictates the starting line of the gauntlet. Now, for the drafted documents that do require step 1, utilizing a mobile notary like the bilingual service highlighted in our sources is incredibly strategic.
Because they come to you.
Exactly. They travel to homes, corporate offices, or even hospitals 7 days a week. They execute that crucial first verification. But once that local signature is secured, you move to step 2, the state level.
Okay, so step 2. I'm assuming the state level is where the Commonwealth of Massachusetts verifies that the local notary isn't just someone who bought a rubber stamp online.
Hit the nail on the head. You bring the notarized document to the Massachusetts Secretary of State. Specifically, you go to the Public Records Division at 1 Ashburton Place in Boston.
I know exactly where that is.
Right. And the clerk there is performing a very specific mechanical action. They are not reading your power of attorney. They don't care what it says. They are looking exclusively at the notary's signature and seal.
So they just check it against a database.
Yes. They cross-reference that signature against a master digital registry of all commissioned notaries in the state. Once they confirm a match, they attach a state certification for non-Hague destinations.
And what does that cost?
The state fee for this is incredibly reasonable, just $6.
Wait, really? Just $6?
Yeah.
Okay, $6 for state verification is a pretty minor hurdle. But the complexity obviously has to escalate from there, because a foreign embassy in D.C. still doesn't care about a state clerk in Boston.
Not even a little bit.
Right. The foreign embassy only deals with the federal government. So step 3 must be taking this state-certified document down to Washington, D.C.
You got it. The document now heads to the U.S. Department of State for federal authentication. The federal fee is also surprisingly low. It's only $20. But the logistical bottleneck is severe.
Oh, boy. Here we go. How severe?
If you submit this document to Washington by standard mail, the current processing time is a staggering 8 to 12 weeks.
You're kidding. 8 to 12 weeks. If a business owner is trying to close a commercial agreement in Qatar, they cannot pause the entire deal for 3 months while a piece of paper sits in a mailroom in Washington.
It's a huge problem. People lose deals over this all the time.
Well, wait. If the state process in Boston only takes a day, but D.C. takes 12 weeks, couldn't someone just run these in parallel? Like, can I mail a copy of the contract down to D.C. to get the federal stamp processing started while I'm physically walking the original into the state office in Boston?
Do not do that. Attempting to parallel process is the fastest way to get your entire portfolio rejected.
Really?
Yes, this is the most critical rule of the gauntlet. It is a rigidly sequential chain. Each bureaucratic layer is only authenticating the signature of the layer immediately preceding it.
Ah, okay.
The federal government in D.C. is authenticating the signature of the Massachusetts Secretary of State. If you send D.C. a document that hasn't cleared the state level yet, there is literally no state signature for them to verify.
So the mechanism breaks down completely. It is literally a chain of verifying the verifiers. Massachusetts vouches for the local notary. Washington, D.C. vouches for Massachusetts. And then finally, step 4, the foreign embassy vouches for Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
If you reverse or skip a single step, the final entity looks at the paperwork and just sees a missing link in the chain of trust.
And the punishment for a broken chain is severe. You don't get to just fix the one missing step. You are forced to start completely from scratch.
Oh, you have to go all the way back to step 1.
All the way back. You often have to reissue and renotarize the original document. A single sequence error burns 4 to 12 weeks of your life and throws anywhere from $300 to $700 down the drain in wasted courier and application fees.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
Well, how do you speed up step 3 without messing up the sequence?
The only way to survive the federal bottleneck in step 3 without waiting months is to hire an expedited federal courier service. You pay someone to physically walk the document into the D.C. Authentication's office.
And let me guess, that's not $20.
Not at all. That privilege adds significant cost, sometimes an extra $250 to $400.
The sequential rigidity is punishing enough, but the final link in this chain, step 4, introduces an entirely new variable. When you hand your heavily authenticated document to a foreign embassy, you are no longer dealing with domestic bureaucracy. You are effectively stepping onto sovereign foreign soil.
That's a great point. The rules change completely.
This means the rules governing your paperwork are now subject to the geopolitical climate of that specific nation.
Geopolitics absolutely dictates the logistics of your paperwork at this final stage. Every embassy has its own distinct administrative quirks, internal policies, and political frictions.
Right.
And what's fascinating here is how international treaties often collide with entrenched local bureaucracy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's analyze the situation with China, because according to the updated sources, there's a massive paradox occurring right now with documents bound for the Chinese mainland.
Yes, the China situation is very unique right now.
So in November 2023, China officially joined the 1961 Hague Apostille Convention. Technically, they are now on the streamlined list. A Massachusetts resident should be able to get a single apostille stamp at one Ashburton place and be completely finished.
By the letter of international law, yes, they should be. The national government in Beijing signed the treaty, decreeing that public documents from Hague members are legally accepted with only an apostille.
Right, problem solved.
But the operational reality on the ground tells a very different story. The sources issue a stark warning here. Many Chinese provincial offices and local authorities have been incredibly slow to update their internal procedures.
So they don't even know about the treaty.
Or they just don't care. You have local clerks in rural provinces who have relied on the traditional four-step embassy legalization process for decades.
It perfectly highlights the friction between a centralized national decree and just, local bureaucratic inertia. International headlines announce a global treaty, diplomats shake hands, champagne is poured. But the actual clerk in a provincial office simply refuses to process a digital or physical apostille because it doesn't match the training manual they've used for 20 years.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it proves a really harsh reality about international law. Treaties are just pieces of paper until local administrative authorities actually decide to honor them.
Wow. So what do you do?
Because of this entrenched resistance, the sources provide a very clear directive for dealing with China right now. If your Chinese counterpart insists on traditional legalization, or if you have even a shadow of a doubt about the local provincial rules, you must execute the full four-step embassy legalization chain to avoid rejection.
You essentially have to pretend the 1961 treaty doesn't exist just to ensure your document survives the local clerk's desk.
And completing the four-step process for China introduces even more physical friction for a Massachusetts resident, right? Because the Chinese consular office in Boston actually closed back in 2020.
Exactly. The geopolitical tension literally increases the physical distance your paperwork must travel. Because the Boston consulate remains closed, Massachusetts residents cannot simply walk their documents in.
So where do they go?
They are forced to utilize approved couriers to transport their sensitive paperwork all the way to the Consulate General in New York, which obviously adds further expense and transit time.
Right. China is a prime example of internal bureaucratic friction. But let's look at external diplomatic fractures. Take Iran. Oh, Iran is a fascinating case study.
The United States government does not maintain diplomatic relations with Iran. There is no Iranian embassy in Washington. So how does the chain of trust function when the final link doesn't even exist on U.S. soil?
You have to utilize diplomatic workarounds. To legalize a document for use in Iran, you must route your paperwork through a third-party intermediary.
Who acts as the intermediary?
Specifically, you send your documents to the Iranian interest section, which is incredibly operated out of the Pakistan embassy in Washington, D.C.
So you're processing an Iranian legal document through the sovereign territory of the Pakistan embassy inside the United States Capitol.
It's wild.
That is a masterclass in geopolitical maneuvering, just to get a signature verified.
It requires extreme logistical precision. And then, you encounter nations like Saudi Arabia, where the bureaucracy is just highly protective, particularly regarding educational credentials.
Oh, so someone is moving there to work.
Right. Say a Massachusetts resident is moving to Riyadh to teach, and they need their university degree legalized. They cannot simply run the standard 4 steps. Saudi Arabia requires pre-approval from the Saudi Cultural Mission before the embassy will even accept the submission.
Wait, really? A whole separate mission?
Yes. You have to satisfy an entirely separate layer of cultural vetting before the legal authentication can even begin.
It is literally a gauntlet wrapped inside another gauntlet. But, the geopolitical landscape isn't universally hostile to efficiency. Sometimes diplomatic arrangements heavily favor the local resident. The sources highlight Taiwan as a rare logistical convenience.
Yeah, Taiwan offers a stark contrast to the D.C. courier nightmares we've been talking about. Massachusetts residents processing documents for Taiwan don't have to navigate federal mail delays or hire expensive third-party walkers.
What's the process like?
They can simply make an appointment, physically walk their documents into the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office, also known as TECO, located right in Boston, pay a nominal $15 fee, and have the process completed locally within a week or two.
The disparity there is staggering. Depending entirely on the flag flying over your destination country, your final step could be a pleasant $15 transaction right down the street in Boston, or it could require routing sensitive legal paperwork through a proxy embassy in Washington, D.C. for hundreds of dollars.
And we haven't even factored in the cost of certified translations yet.
Oh, gosh, right.
Many of these embassies demand them, adding another $30 to $80 per page on top of the legalization fees.
The financial burden compounds incredibly quickly. So knowing how high the stakes are, the priority becomes survival. How do you, as the listener, navigate this environment without draining your corporate budget or delaying your international adoption by 6 months?
It's all about preparation.
The most vital coach tip from the sources requires $0 and takes exactly 30 seconds.
Yes. Before you draft a single line of a contract, before you even think about hiring a mobile notary, you run a diagnostic check.
And where do you run that?
You go to the Hague Conference website, which is HCAR.net-et, and you navigate to their Apostille section. You just search for your destination country.
And that's it.
That single query dictates your entire operational strategy. If the country is on the member list, you can plan for the streamlined apostille. You keep your budget low and your timeline short. If they are absent from the list, you must immediately begin mentally and financially preparing for the grueling 4-step embassy legalization process.
It is the ultimate preventative measure against the apostille trap. And if that search reveals that you are indeed facing the 4-step non-Hague gauntlet, the sources provide a critical strategy for mitigating the financial damage. Document bundling.
Bundling is huge.
If a company is opening a branch overseas, they don't just need one document. They need a power of attorney, a certificate of incorporation, and maybe a commercial agreement.
Right, and processing those documents individually, like as the need arises, is pure financial self-sabotage.
Because you're paying the fees every single time.
Exactly. You would be paying the DC courier fees and the embassy service charges multiple times over. By bundling 3 or 4 documents together into a single legalization package, you can actually reduce your per-document service fees by 30 to 50%.
That's significant savings.
It really is. You are consolidating the heaviest logistical costs, the couriers and the project management, into a single physical journey.
So what does this all mean? To me, it highlights the immense, tangible value of understanding the architecture of a system before you attempt to navigate it. You cannot charm a clerk at the State Department into skipping a protocol. You cannot debate international law with a provincial clerk in China.
They do not care.
Right. The chain of trust is mechanical and it's unforgiving. You have to know the precise path your document requires, and you must walk that path exactly as prescribed.
This raises an important question, though, as we look toward the horizon of international administration. We have spent this entire deep dive mapping out an incredibly analog, deeply physical system.
Yeah, very paper heavy.
We are talking about wet ink signatures, embossed seals, and FedEx envelopes moving physically across oceans. If a massive international treaty from 1961 was designed to simplify this, yet here we are in 2026, still dealing with major economies clinging to the physical rubber stamp, well, what happens when this analog system fully collides with modern digital identity?
That is the ultimate tension right there. We live in an era of cryptographic math, blockchain technology, and decentralized digital identities that are mathematically impossible to forge.
Yeah.
Yet, to prove a document is real, we still demand a human being visually compare a pen stroke against a digital registry.
Exactly. Will the concept of a universally accepted digital apostille one secured by cryptography rather than a bureaucrat stamp ever gain enough global political trust to replace the 1961 Hague Convention entirely?
It's a fair question.
Or is the physical rubber stamp and the bureaucratic friction it creates a permanent feature of national sovereignty that no algorithm will ever be allowed to override?
It really gives you a lot to consider regarding the true nature of a borderless world. So the next time you are standing in a local government office fuming because a clerk rejected your application over a missing signature, just remember the geopolitical gauntlet. At least you don't have to mail that application to Washington, D.C., wait 12 weeks and route it through a proxy embassy just to prove you are who you say you are. The machinery of global trust is a heavy thing to move,